cool new feature, which is fun and hot technology, but I have to now remediate something because I didn't do the job right the first time. So yes, it is motivating. The other thing we want to do is to develop consistency across the entire product stack. When my team was sort of first formed, we focused on sort of our core tech stack products, the Oracle database. You know, we're not, by the way, just a database company. We have beaucoup products, thousands. Database, middleware, kind of the core technical underpinnings of the rest of our stack. And as time has worn on, you know, we wanted to be more consistent across the company. If we're doing something good in how do we build software, let's do the same good things everywhere. But also, we keep growing by acquisition. You know, some of you may have heard we bought a little company called Sun. That is probably the biggest. I have this visual of a boa constrictor swallowing an elephant and having to, you know, kind of digest it. It's a very large company to swallow, but that is not by any means the only company that we acquired. So when we do acquire a company, one of the things we try to do is to say, well, pretty quickly, what are they doing in terms of their assurance processes? How are they engineering security into their products? And by the way, we don't always assume that we're doing everything perfectly and nobody else does anything well. We look at, is there something good that someone's doing we could copy and make a broader program. But one of the things we want to do is to align people with our assurance processes pretty quickly. And I'll talk a little bit more about this particular story later, but one of the conversations that I've had recently with a customer I don't really want to have again had to do with, oh, you bought this company how long ago? And I've looked at their security and I don't think it's, you know, it's your brand now. This is not what I expect from you. I expect better. And they're right. So once your brand is on it, you know, you have to, it has to, you know, just, there's a certain expectation that goes with that. We like to think there is. And you want it to be a positive expectation, not a negative one. So we want to bring those acquisitions into our assurance processes as quickly as possible. The other thing we try to do is, as I said, I don't want to be the security cops. We try to build expertise in each group. Security expertise, as I'm sure most of you know, is not that easy to come by. So I can either try to build the big empire where I have a group of 300 people, woohoo. Or I could say that I will never ever have enough people to look over the shoulders of every single developer and make sure they're coding properly, or every single QA person, or every single product manager. It is far better to try to get that expertise seated in development. I used to call it kind of the conversion model. You know, originally there were Rabbi Yeshua and his group of disciples, and they went out and converted the heathen. And then we have this whole new religion growing up. Well, it's sort of the same thing. You want development groups to understand the religion of secure coding, and the only way to do that is to kind of send people out into the heathen lands and convert them. And we also want to preserve our core corporate culture. In other words, you know, we do have bright, talented, motivated developers, and you want to preserve the culture and the autonomy they have to a certain extent. And part of that means that we don't do cookie cutter. One of the things we did recently, we have this a release checklist, which started out, it sounds strange to say this, but it started out when I was a product manager on the Oracle database, and 2 releases in a row, someone called me up to say, about 5 minutes before they cut the gold CD master, the file permissions on the executable are set to 777, is that okay? No, why are you calling me now? Why didn't you figure this out earlier? So I said, okay, I'm gonna create a checklist. Most of you, anybody here have young children? All right, so I'm sure that before you send them off to school, do you have your lunch? Do you have the permission slip? Do you have your backpack? All those little things. Same thing for when we release product. We started a security checklist. And we do that now for every release, and as time has gone on, that's tied back to our coding standards. Now it's online and automated, and it's back to my point about entrepreneurial culture. It is tailored differently for different development groups. Well, why is that? Because not all groups are the same. And what a surprise. Now we're a hardware company. Hardware, not same thing as software. So we had to be tailored differently, so you don't have a developer coming back and saying, how come you're asking me this really dumb question that has absolutely no applicability to my organization? That's harassing, and it is. So you want to make things applicable and give them autonomy. And then the other key thing is oversight. I'm very pleased to say that I do not, in general, have to escalate things. But I have had to do it, and the fact we have a structure in place that makes it easy for me to do it, and if you don't have that, you're in a really bad position. I've actually told my team, I said, if we're focused on something that we think is important and management doesn't think it's important, if they're not worried, we shouldn't be. And if we are worried about it and it's a business thing that's worth worrying about, then management should support us, and they will support us. But if you don't have that if you have that mismatch, you're not going to get anywhere in trying to put security in your development organization. It's not going to work. And it's a very frustrating job. Fortunately, I don't have that problem. So why is it a corporate level concern? Because the business impact of somebody not getting it doesn't just affect their group, it affects other people in the company. So for example, as I've unfortunately found out sometimes, if you have a defect and you didn't handle it well or it's significant, there are other costs that will be incurred by other people, not just the developer. And by the way, I am not ignoring customer concerns here, but this is just to the rest of the company. So other organizations, QA, support doesn't like getting lots of phone calls. When are you going to fix this? How long has it been out there? Legal, all these other people. And if you don't do something well, then you have to go through like a PR fire drill, and no one wants to do that. Potential lost revenue or deferred revenue. Business risk for Oracle because, again, we run our own business, our own software. Actually, I've used that to my advantage. So a few years ago, I had one development group. There was a particular security issue, and the question was somebody going to fix it? It was Q4. They wanted to ship their product. They wanted to recognize revenue. I totally get that. But it was a significant defect. And I said, okay, here's the deal. So I went to the IT department and said, okay, guys, and by the way, we do not, by policy, share information with them about vulnerabilities in our own products as a general rule. We treat everyone the same. In this case, I went to them and said, okay, here's a particular defect. The discussion is whether we should fix it before it ships. You, the IT department, are the first customer for this. Would you take the product if you knew about this? Would you deploy it? Hell no. All right, so I wasn't entirely surprised at that, but I went back to development and said, look, just so you know, this is not an abstract academic discussion. This is a live customer. They would not take this risk. And by the way, if you ship the product like that in Q4, what are you really telling customers? We wanted your money. We had a hole big enough to drive the QE2 through. We hoped you wouldn't notice. Now, we're not that kind of company. We don't really treat customers that way. Is that really the message you want to send? Oh, no, I guess not. Yes, I know, I guess not. And by the way, I knew we would do the right thing, but it was helpful to remind people what are our corporate values, and you can't put a customer at risk. So yes, it's a business risk. It would have been a business risk for IT and any other customer. And frankly, a single product team can actually damage the rest of your brand, the rest of your reputation. So this is true in a lot of other areas of business. When people talk about, what are our core ethics or integrity, somebody shouldn't be allowed to make a business decision that puts the rest of their business at risk with impunity. And that's why you have oversight, and that's why you do have corporate values, and that's why you have to stand up for them. So the few times I've really had to escalate something, it has been because I think this, product X or product X's management does not get to put the rest of the company at risk because they choose not to think security is important. It damages everyone else. So what kind of oversight do we have? Well, lucky for me, I used to be in a development organization, which I really liked. But the problem with that was when I would try to say, here's our, what we're doing in assurance, the other product divisions would say, well, you're in that division, I don't have to listen to you. So I actually, a few years ago, was pulled out of development and I worked for the chief corporate architect, which means that my group, by the way, our chief corporate architect works for Larry Ellison. So, hey, when people see you're higher on the chop chain, they return your phone calls faster. But it means that when we put policies in place for how do we build software, how do we handle vulnerabilities, the standards that we have around secure development are corporate level. They're not just one product division. So that makes my life easier. We have an oversight committee that looks at security, multiple security, not just product security, across all our lines of business. So it's everything from regulatory requirements to business risk and security. But it has lines of business owners, legal, marketing, PR, physical security, and it's chaired by the corporate architect and one of our co-presidents. So it doesn't really get any higher than that. And we meet twice a year and we look at business risk issues across the entire company. And it turns out that tends to be a very good forum to raise things. And sometimes it's, hey, look at the good things somebody has done.